following episode of the 5 Question Project is a Centerville, Washington history production. This episode is brought to you by the following platinum sponsors.
(1956)
We choose to go to the moon in this decade.
That's one small step for man.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Tear down this wall.
These buildings down. We'll hear all of it soon.
We, the people.
What are we talking about today?
We're talking about shopping life in the city of Centerville.
Oh my gosh, I love shopping.
How does this look?
Oh, it's so cute. I love it. I can't believe online shopping's still a thing. Why would someone want to wait 24 hours for something to arrive at their home when they can just go to the store and buy it?
Did you know people used to have to travel down to Miamisburg, downtown Dayton, to go to stores like Reich's and Elder Beerman just to go shopping because they didn't have any stores in Centerville?
Huh. Did you go to Reich's?
And we shopped in Miamisburg. They had a J.C. Penney's and they had a shoe store there and a bakery and a grocery store, so that's all we did most of.
And as far as shopping was concerned, we went on to Xenia because they had a number of dry goods stores over there. In Spring Valley, they also had 2 grocery stores that they shopped at a bit. So when my parents first moved to Centerville, that's where we got our mail from, Route 1, Spring Valley, Ohio. So, and then it took a number of years to get that changed.
In Spring Valley a little bit. They had a grocery store there. They had a bank there. It was a nice little community, maybe a little bit, well, it was smaller than Centerville, but it would have been relative to the size of Centerville. My family, we shopped at Miamisburg, just like Dutch says. There was an A&P there. There was a shoe store there, drugstore, men's store, Sutman's.
Yeah.
Miamisburg was an up-and-coming community at that time.
Well, yes, I can say that a couple of my friends and I, we would get all dressed up in our dresses and our high heels and gloves, and we go downtown Dayton by our parents would drop us off at the Oakwood line bus stop, and we'd go on down to Dayton by bus, and then we'd call when we got back, and they'd come pick us up in Oakwood. That's how we went down and shopped, and we'd try on clothes. We'd go to between Elder Beerman's and Reich's, mostly Reich's.
There were very few options. Until Town and Country was built, we used to go down to Miamisburg, and I'd buy my school clothes down at Sutman's and in Miamisburg. Then they built Town and Country, and then I bought all my clothes at Penny's or the Metropolitan. So we went to Foodorama. That was probably the place. For so many dollars, for every dollar you spent, you got some of these green stamps, and they gave you this little album, and once you filled it, you could redeem it. You went to the S&H store, or Top Value had them as well, and you'd redeem them. It took so many books of filled stamps, and you'd get a toaster or some such thing.
For clothing, it was Gold Circle on Alex Bell, and for any other items, sometimes it was what was called Bargain Barn that was at 48 in Spring Valley also. Bargain Barn was a discount store. It was a really big deal when it came to town because we had not had anything like that before. You could buy a variety of items in there. It was almost like maybe a notch above a flea market, and you could go in and purchase some clothing items or housewares, that type thing, for reasonable prices. Imperial Food Town, and it was either the one that was where Marion's is currently, or the one down by Elder Beerman, where Elder Beerman Centerville was on the other side of that.
I would think that we shopped for clothes more often at Gold Circle, which used to be up at Cross Point Center, and Elder Beerman, which used to be on South Main Street. Those would be the 2 biggest, and then probably the Dayton Mall. If I was shopping individually for myself, we'd go to places in the Dayton Mall to get clothes. Well, where we were located, the closest grocery store would have been Imperial Food Town, which is right now where Marion's Piazza is. And then Foodorama was down there at Whip and Far Hills. And I believe there was an A&P grocery store down there about where Dorothy Lane Market is.
You know what, I think the uniform answer or the universal answer for this is Foodorama. And you talk about Peyton Place and a social club and a grocery store all wrapped up into one. Going there, Phil and Jerry. I think everybody's got a memory about that. It was so social, and the moms, were, it was almost like a coffee clatch or something like that. People went there to meet and bump into other people they knew as much as shopping for groceries.
Elder Beerman, Centerville.
Elder Beerman probably was the most convenient kind of upscale shopping place to go. And then of course you had Gold Circle across the street. And then if you really wanted to do the drive, because it wasn't convenient to get out to the Dayton Mall, but you could take the 2-lane 725 back then and take you 45 minutes to get to the mall.
So at that time my parents were buying my clothes, so we would go to Reich's Kettering or Lazarus, Elder Beerman, sometimes to the mall. I had some Granimals, but I wasn't wearing them in high school.
Back in the day, my parents were both blue-collar workers, so we didn't buy a lot of the high-end clothing. So there was like Gold Circle, there was Kmart, there was
Kmart.
There was one other store, but I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. But it was more of those kind of. Okay. Like if we needed something specific, we would go to the Dayton Mall.
Right, and we did Penny's, Sears, basically, yeah, the stores in the mall was most of the time that we did. Gold Circle was every now and then. Kmart was a biggie.
Yeah, Elder Beerman.
Well, so for clothing and things, we shopped mostly at the Dayton Mall. I think it might have been Lazarus. I don't know when it changed to Macy's, but Lazarus was Reich's when I was a kid. Abercrombie was really big when I was in high school. Benetton was big in middle school for girls. It was the grunge era in '95, so I suppose, the music that was popular at the time, Nirvana, I think Pearl Jam, but that was all kind of came out in '92 or so, and the way they dressed, everybody caught on. I mean, so it was a lot of flannels and waffle shirts and combat boots, and they always called it grunge, and we all dressed like that. It was great because lots of layers and.
Kroger all the time. My mom loved Hills. I don't know if that was around still, though. I could be blending generations there. She loved Steinmart, Marshalls, and Cross Point Center. She loved Kohl's. Went to Kohl's all the time, and their Kohl's Cash.
We shopped at Marshalls a lot. I went to Forever 21 often, at the Dayton Mall.
I shopped probably at either Kohl's. My mom was a big fan of Kohl's, or the Dayton Mall.
We got our milk about 3/4 of a mile from the house. We walked down to Miller's and bought a half a gallon of milk and walked back home. We did that every other day. And it was good milk. Go to the movie downtown and stop at Papa Bolster's and have a hamburger and a milkshake. And of course we patronized the Stagecoach. And I'm trying to think of something. On most of the dinners they had would be down at the Wishing Well. They always have groups have meetings and they'd have lunch.
But Miamisburg had a buffet down there called Harbell's. And if we go in there on the weekends, my aunt would take me and my sister and 2 sisters, $1 a piece for a buffet. Yeah.
All you could eat.
All you could eat.
Papa Bolsher's, he had a cheap date when you went there, let me tell you. It was right in across from St. Albert's Church on Route 48, almost into Oakwood.
Yeah. Now, when I worked at the grocery store, I went to the Stagecoach Inn for lunch.
Yeah.
And, it might have been 70 cents or something like that. for a bowl of soup and a sandwich. Actually going out to dinner, I don't recall having ever done that. Even the Wishing Well, the Wishing Well was kind of a nice place to go.
I don't remember going out very often. There used to be a place on 48 up towards, across from St. Albert's Church. It was called Bolzer's. My dad loved fish sandwiches. He would take us up to Bolzer's to have fish sandwiches. That was a long time ago. Sandy's was down there right around the corner from Foodorama. And actually the Dino Poulos, who was in our class, and his father owned that Sandy's. And we'd go in there, and it was kind of not very inexpensive. McDonald's, Sandy's was probably the only place. And then, of course, Frisch's in high school. That's another place. We'd go there on Friday nights after football games and things and harass the, I called them bellhops, I guess. The girls would come out and bring your food to you. Casanos, and Casanos was in Kettering. Their very first Casanos was, where the Wild Birds Unlimited is, up there across from town.
We might stop off first at the Stagecoach Inn to get a hamburger and a Coke. Afterwards, we'd go out and go to Frisch's, and girls would drive around in Frisch's and see some of the boys, and the boys would make, we'd sit in order from our car, and the boys would keep driving around, in and out of Frisch's and honk their horns and rev their engines and in the nice big blue cars.
As far as leaving school to go to a restaurant was with either walking or driving distance to get back to class on time. There was a neat little place in what's now Independence Square. I believe it was called Emily's. And they had really good roast beef sandwiches. It was just a married couple that ran it. There was Bill Knapp's up at Loop Road. A Friendly's right in Centerville on South Main Street, I think, was already there. That was a great place to eat.
There was this place over in Kettering called Kenkel's on Wilmington, not far from Rolandia, that every once in a while I would go to. I love that place.
Usually Casanos was where most of the time people seemed to hang out. That was the one at 48 in Spring Valley as well.
Ponderosa. But that may have been a little bit earlier. There was the Ponderosa that was down on 48 on Village South. That I remember, but that might have been a little earlier on.
Probably Marion's Pizza. I don't know if you want to call it a restaurant, but that was the place to go.
Del Rio was one. That was a Bob Evans Mexican place, I remember. G's was a big one for my family. We went there a lot, still go there a lot. With my friends, we went to Marion's quite a bit. Of course, every sporting activity ended at Marion's. The season did somewhere.
Whew, in high school. All right. At lunch, I loved Flying Pizza. Love Flying Pizza. We would go there, we had open lunch, we'd go to Flying Pizza. There was a China Cottage, another one. The Hungry Elk is where I would get a burger. I don't like burgers, but the only burgers I liked back then were the Hungry Elk because they had this tomato ketchup, this ketchup that obviously wasn't Heinz. And for some reason I liked it, and their crinkle cut fries.
Nobody's mentioned Ground Round yet, though.
Oh, Ground Round, and there was a Mexican place, Chi-Chi's.
Chi-Chi's, because we got to go there, you get the ice cream and the little baseball hat at the end, and they also had peanuts on the floor. That just made it like the most fun restaurant to go to.
So we went to TGI Fridays a lot, not just because I worked there, but it was a fun atmosphere. We enjoyed Ruby Tuesdays. I had a lot of friends who worked there, so we would go there. I don't know, we kind of went where we knew people and where we'd have fun.
Double Days. I loved, there was others. I liked Frickers moved in, which I got excited about. I think also La Rosa's over on Alex Bell and Loop was built during high school, and that was kind of really exciting and one of my favorite places.
Definitely Chipotle. I used to go there for lunch actually in high school.
We like to eat at Ruby Tuesdays, but I got food poisoning.
Well, I bought a car when I was 16. It was a 40 Chevrolet, and I got it from Earl Thomas, who was an insurance man.
Yeah.
I thought that was the biggest thing I ever had, So it cost me $300 if I can remember correctly.
If a new car was bought in our family, my dad went to Spring Valley and bought it from Badgley Chevrolet.
We went to Miamisburg and bought Chevys. Lackner's was a dealership.
My dad bought a Chevrolet in '47 from Lackner, just like Dutch talked about. Then he went to Pontiac 1950, and that came from, I think that came from came from Blanchester, Ohio. As far as cars and kids, we were lucky to buy a used car. You know, it was just the fact that you didn't buy new cars. They weren't. I bought a new car in 1954, and I thought I was something, let me tell you.
Was it green?
It was green, thank you, Dutch.
I remember
It was
that.
a Bel Air Chevrolet.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that's the car that we took our honeymoon in.
Oh, boy.
So that's another story.
Most people remember the Wapiti. It was a school newspaper. The Wapiti is another name for an elk, or a type of elk, in case somebody doesn't know that. And they used to have a section in there called the Heap of the Week. And my brother Bill's car was, I think, about a '54 Chevy, and that was the original, very first Heap of the Week.
I loved it as much as they did. I remember there being street rod racing. Social Railroad was one of the places where we would go, and he would race. I remember one night in particular when he raced an orange Camaro. He did beat it, by the way. But it was a lot of fun. I do remember thinking, I hope no one's coming the other way, and thank God there wasn't. But for the most part, you know, we would go to the drive-in, and of course the Dart was always going with us. But we had a lot of fun with the cars in that era.
Were either Stingers Ford, and maybe later in the later 70s it was Paul Sherry Chevrolet. A car back then might cost $10,000 if it was really a nice car.
My first car was a 1965 Ford Falcon. So my brother had it, and then I assumed it.
Well, I didn't get it till I was out of high school, but it was a Chevy S10 pickup, and I loved that thing.
Mine was a 1985 AMC Spirit named the Blue Bomber. My parents paid, I think, maybe $700, $800.
1990 GMC Jimmy black two-door, $6,000.
My dad he was really excited for us to drive. He thought it was the greatest thing ever to be 16 and get your driver's license. So when my sister and I were about 10, he started encouraging us to save for a car. And he said that whatever we saved, he would match. And we saved a lot. We babysat a lot, and did chores and did different things to earn money. And I think I was close to $3,000 by the time I was 16 to buy a car. So the deal was I'd have a $6,000 car. And we were looking and found a used car. It was sort of my dream car. It was a Jeep Cherokee. It was the boxy ones, but they hadn't come out with the Grand Cherokees yet. And it was more than $6,000. It was a used one on a lot, and he surprised me with that car. It took my $3,000, which he should have done, but that was my first car. It was $20,000.
I got my first car from my dad, and we probably bought it for under $1,000 because it was broken, and we spent an entire summer rebuilding the engine. It was a 98 blue Cavalier convertible.
1956.
We choose to go to the moon in this occasion.
That's one small step for man.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Tear down this wall.
These buildings down. We'll hear all of us soon.
We, the people.